Welcome back, and today I've got a very in-depth video for you. We will be looking at the premium defenders, but not just in terms of how good they are and how many points they're going to score, but we'll be looking at things like squad structuring and how the pricing essentially affects your midfield and forward line, the opportunity cost. And I actually made these slides 4 or 5 days ago for this video, but I've had to tweak every single one of them this morning because so many new variables have come into light, and my perspectives of not just defenders, but kind of the whole asset pool has really changed. And thus I've got some really unique and interesting insights regarding these premium defenders. We've passed 1,000 subscribers, which I'm extremely grateful for. So thank you very, very much. Do consider subscribing as we now approach 2,000. Without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into the video. So we're going to start by looking at this from a macro level perspective and then take things from there. In FPL, we are never just buying one player. I'll give a few examples. Maybe we buy Bruno Fernandes, and maybe the alternative to him was Son, and we end up going for the Portuguese man. And Bruno scores 10 points on Friday night. Great. But on Monday night, Son scores 12. Well, in reality, for that decision, we've lost 2 points, looking from a perspective of opportunity cost, right? And given there are a decent volume of premium defensive options, but given also that they block funds from accessing better midfield options, it's of paramount importance that not only we pick the right ones, but we pick the right structure as well. For example, do we have 0? Do we have 1? Do we have 2? Do we have 3? And from there, which ones do we buy? So that's what this first slide is trying to essentially get you to look at in a slightly different perspective. You're never just buying one player. So we're never just buying Trent, because Trent blocks us from Gvardiol, or he potentially blocks us from Ben White. So here's an example, right? Let's say, fine, you're not going Salah, but you would like to have a double premium midfield, and you decide on Saka and Son, right? You think they're going to do really well game week 1. Well, then sure, you can have Trent, but Trent is also 1 million more than Saliba. And let's say you're a bit on the fence about them. Well, then it's not just Trent or Saliba. It's Trent plus, let's say, Elanga, or Saliba plus Gibbs-White. So which combination of players there scores more points? They act as blockers, and for those who play poker, they'll definitely get this concept. But every player you buy acts as a blocker to another, and thus I think when you're looking at premium defenders, you can't just be like, oh, you know, Trent's got good fixtures, and yeah, sure, he's 7 million, but I think he's going to get returns. What about Saliba? In the first 3, does Saliba get more clean sheets, and could he potentially get maybe like 2-3 less points? But that extra million, now I can spend it in midfield, and I will gain more points from there. So overall, I'm winning. And thus, I really think you need to take this problem from a macro level perspective. And the example at the bottom illustrates it well. The difference between Watkins and Solanke, and then Palmer and Mbeumo. So like having them as a combination, which one is more suitable for your side? And overall as a combination, which one do you think scores more? The opportunity cost of another player and the fact that players act as blockers, I think, are 2 very, very important concepts to grasp within this problem. But now we can hop into the players. As I mentioned in the introduction, I changed all of the slides because initially I just didn't have the perspectives I do now. I think a lot's changed in the last 4 days. I wasn't too bullish on any Arsenal defenders, but my view has really, really shifted since. So we'll start with Gabriel, probably the favourite in terms of budget value last year. The one thing I'm not set on is the fact that last year, right in that first game, Gabriel was benched. And for a lot of you who owned him, like myself, it was very frustrating. And the reason is Arteta wanted a left centre-back who was more of a passer. He's obviously got Saliba there, who's brilliant in so many facets. But he wanted a left centre-back that had a passing profile, essentially, right? And Gabriel's not that. He's an aggressive jeweler, and he's someone who really matured throughout the season and got rid of his error-prone status, I would say, to a significant extent. But he isn't a passer, and I think that's what he wanted. He had an idea of Martinelli really wide on the left and Havertz in that left 8. And given that Havertz, again, wasn't really much of a passer, he wanted that progression from at least the left side, but this time from a deeper area, as opposed to the right, where you have the likes of Odegaard and Saka, who can always drop into the midfield pockets and really devastate from there and progress well. So with that in mind, that's what he set out to do. Obviously, injuries forced his hand, and Gabriel came back into the side, and he did fantastically well. But is there ever a game where Calafiori starts a left centre-back and he plays Zinchenko at left-back, or he inverts Timber? And it's just these type of things which I'm not 100% sure at. He's shown to be ruthless, right, Arteta? He dropped Ramsdale after some very good performances towards the back end of the season. And again, he dropped Gabriel at the start of last season, and no one really saw that coming. So with that in mind, I'd just be a little bit careful. And I think given they're the same price, sure, Gabriel's got more threat from set pieces, but unless he's nailed, I would be looking at Saliba. Let's go to the fixtures now. And in the first 3 alone, I think they're pretty good. You've got Brighton at home and Wolves at home. And the fact they're both at the Emirates definitely increases clean sheet potential. I think I saw a stat which said that effectively the difference between home and away in terms of scoring goals and collecting points was about 10%. It may not sound like a lot, but over the course of the season, 10% is quite a bit. You know, you invest £1 million, 10% is quite a bit. Even Villa away, like, don't get me wrong, Villa are a top side, but Arsenal are arguably one of the best defensive sides in the world, if not the best. And with that in mind, sure, they could genuinely go to Villa Park and keep a clean sheet. Sure, their defenders are all capable of getting attacking returns. So in the first 3, they could provide some very good value. And that's where my perspective really shifted. Initially, I was very much on the Trent Guardiola hype, but as we'll come to, I've slightly toned down on both of them. So then it becomes the question that if we are going to pick an Arsenal defender, because we really do fancy attacking those first 3 fixtures, and we think we could potentially get an attacking return from any of them, right? We could from set pieces or open play. Who do we go for? And the debate comes from Saliba's higher floor, given his expected minutes, but also the fact that he's probably just well positioned to perform slightly better on the bonus point system overall, or do we pay 0.5 more for Ben White and his upside from open play? Now, if you can afford it, and only if you can afford it, remember, we're looking in combinations here. We're not looking at if you've got 0.5 spare. We're looking at the difference between Elanga and Gibbs-White, as an example. Okay? We're looking at the difference between Havertz and Solanke, etc., etc. We're looking at the difference between a 6.5 and Eze. If you can afford that and not necessarily weaken your team too much, I would look at White. I think his open play threat is so good that he's probably worth, especially in the first 3, trying to catch a haul. Saliba's obviously not as good of a threat from set pieces as Gabriel, and thus there's slightly limited upside there. A better floor, I would say, but slightly limited upside. I think in a game that's so open early on, where Ben White's going to be a differential, that's a great differential to have. You have the best defense in the world, in my opinion, and you have the most attacking fullback out of the 2 flanks. So for me, if you have that 0.5 spare, I'd go for White. Now, my overall consensus is that I'm tempted to say that he's arguably, or Saliba and White are arguably better than Guardiola, simply because of Pep's comments today and how many players aren't even going to play in the Community Shield. And as we'll come on to, I think we'll see the next iteration, which maybe doesn't suit Guardiola as much as it did last year. So yeah, this is a team that I'm definitely more bullish on, and I would strongly consider to at least shift perspectives, because I haven't seen too much hype around them, but I'm really starting to warm to them. Right, now we've got the first 4 fixtures details here, but even game week 5 and 6 are pretty good. So overall, I would say fixture-wise, Liverpool have the best run to start with, right? Especially out of the big team. So that's a massive positive. Trent obviously was at the Euros and needs a holiday, just like all of the guys who ran deep in the tournament. Connor Bradley was a brilliant understudy to him in the second half of the season or midway through the season when he got injured. And I just worry, potentially, for that first game, which is probably the game you're really eyeing up, does he get minutes? Does he take away from Trent's minutes if Trent's not fully fit? And because it's a new system as well, right? It's not just, okay, you know what you're doing, we've done this before, but he hasn't played a game in slot system. I imagine Bradley will play the next game, and he will probably get used to it far quicker than Trent will, simply given the time he spent in it. And I wonder, therefore, does he just trust Bradley a bit more for the opening game and give him those minutes? That's something to, I guess, monitor, because we don't really know how things are going to play out, how much Trent's going to be involved in preseason, but certainly something to monitor. The next thing is slot system, and I think this is one that is widely open to interpretation. I've seen a bunch of threads on X which essentially go 2 ways. Some say it will be better for their defense, some will say it will be worse for their defense. So I'll just go into this a little bit. The fullbacks here are very different to a Klopp system. Right, you're not going to have Robbo bombing up and down the wings. You're going to have both of them very narrow. I wouldn't necessarily call them inverted. I don't really think that's what it is. I think they're just very, very narrow. So, sure, they're susceptible to transitions, especially in the wide areas, right? And when you have really good wingers, let's take someone like Son, let's take someone like Salah. I know he plays for Liverpool, you know what I mean? Very direct and quick and technically sound wingers, then yeah, sure, you can be in a lot of trouble there. But they cover the center of the pitch quite well. When Thomas Tuchel won the Premier League, that was something he did in a completely different system, but he essentially gave up a lot of the wide space. He allowed for a lot of crosses because he trusted his centre-backs, and he crowded the middle. And for me, that is a brilliant way to go about defending, especially in this league. Central numeric superiority. It's something I really like. It's something I've been big on for a while. So I actually think in terms of clean sheets, in terms of chances conceded, big chances conceded, they'll be okay. Maybe Alisson's appeal even increases slightly, given he'll face, I guess, low XG shots at a higher volume. But for me personally, from a defensive standpoint, I'm more bullish on a Trent clean sheet than I would be last year. How does him being so narrow affect him and his attacking returns? Well, he's got such a good passing range that he's always got those diagonals. I just wonder if he won't be on the end of moves as much. I think he'll be behind the 8 and 10s in very central areas. But as they're the ones to push on, I think we could see a slight decrease in the usual type of assist, right? So you won't see as many crosses from him. And if you do, they'll be from slightly different angles, which he's very capable of, right? Because he is the best attacking fullback in the world, in my opinion. At least the best creative fullback in the world. I think that's probably a better way to put it. So I think you'll get less crosses from traditional Klopp-like areas, but probably more from more central and slightly deeper areas. It's going to really come down to the finishing quality, especially in the air, of the likes of Szoboszlai if he used to play as a 10, Nunes, Gakpo, Jota, etc. So I'm probably going for a slight decline in assists from open play. Goal threat, I think, might actually increase if he is to be central and he can get himself a bit higher up the pitch. Those type of areas. From range, maybe shooting, he scores a couple more. Obviously, he's got free kicks, etc. So, yeah, goal threat slightly increased, assists threat slightly decreased. In terms of Robertson versus Van Dijk, I think complete non-option, Robertson, right? If he's going to be narrow, it doesn't suit his skill set at all. He's a defender who probably, well, he's not a small space footballer, right? He's not particularly proficient in those pockets. He's good at bombing up and down those wings and really getting those crosses in, using his physicality and leveraging that. But when he's narrow and he has to play a lot more short distance passes and has to be a lot more intricate and tidy, I wonder if maybe he'll struggle a little bit and we see Gomez at left back for a while. So for me, if you're going to go one of those two, if you really want inroads to the Liverpool defense at a cheaper price, 100% Virgil van Dijk. But then what do we think about Trent versus Van Dijk? And for me, if you're going to go Liverpool, you should go Trent. Yes, I talked about his decreased assist potential, but it's only by a little bit. And we're also coming from here, right? It's not whereby most defenders their assist potential is about here. We're going from someone who has the highest assist potential amongst pretty much all defenders, at least in the most recent years. So for me, I don't really like Van Dijk as an option. I much prefer spending the 1 million on Trent and then downgrading, for example, giving it to Elanga or Havertz to Solanke, etc., etc. Or maybe even your keeper, depending if you're not going for a 4.5. And here I mentioned how my feet are starting to get a little cold. And the reason for that is Trent's not back for preseason and he hasn't had any minutes yet, right? Compared to the likes of Bradley. So are his expected minutes slightly altered and affected there. And also, given we haven't seen too much of them, and things I've spoke about in my Salah video, no Salah video, about are they able to replicate the same level of performance given what Klopp did, I might just be a little cautious and really look to attack the midfield because there are a few good defensive options in the form of the Arsenal boys who will probably get you clean sheets in the first 3. And maybe Gvardiol if you want to toss it up between these two. So yeah, those are some things to note about Liverpool. Now, the man you see on screen is probably the only option, I think, from City from the offset. There's no reason to pay 0.5 less for any of the defenders who arguably have worse minutes and are significantly less attacking. Ake maybe is the only one I can get on board with. But apart from that, I think if you're going to go for City defense, it's Gvardiol or nothing. Now, this man was a revelation last year, and he completely changed the landscape of what a left back really is. The fact that Guardiola trusted him, the fact that he even made a role in the first place, which was a hybrid left mid / left winger, and the fact that he trusted him to do that, given he's so young, given he's new to the side, and we've seen kind of second season syndrome with Pep sides at City, kind of shows how good of a player this really is, right? What he actually did from those areas was magnificent. He leveraged his ball striking and also his ability to move so uniquely and operate and function at such weird angles. He's a left-footed centre-back, right, essentially, playing in sometimes the left half space next to Haaland, and he would be able to cross so well from deep areas, which is such an awkward area to cross from. So I was so impressed, right? The only thing is, I don't think City were anywhere close to being at their best. Yes, they won the league, but that's just a testament to how good the whole organisation is. But I don't think they were anywhere close to being as good as they really can be. And mainly because of the lack of service Haaland got and how unoptimized the system was for him. They didn't create as many chances for him or clear-cut chances for him as they did in his first year. And that's mainly because there was no De Bruyne, there was no passer in the middle, and it was a lot more Foden carrying and ball striking and optimizing conditions for the number 47 to thrive, right? I don't think, however, that is their highest ceiling iteration, and therefore I think he changes his system and introduces more of a passer in the number 10, and that's what I think De Bruyne is going to become this year. I think Foden's responsibilities will slightly change, right? And I've got a lot coming up on this in a video I'm really excited about down the line. But with this in mind, if he has a passer in the middle, he probably doesn't need to take the risk with Guardiola playing so high. He can probably get him to come back, operate in that left centre-back channel where he's so competent, reduce the strength and likelihood of the opposition transitioning and scoring, because that's the way that football's going. And he is very much a manager who likes to essentially suffocate the opposition in terms of their chances. So I don't think he'll actually be as attacking this year. This is just my theory for now. We'll see how preseason plays out, specifically the game against Chelsea in the Community Shield. But I do think we see a slight regression in terms of his output as a result of this. The fixtures are really good, however, after Chelsea, and that's probably why I'm on the fence with this guy. Yes, he's so good in the final third, but would I prefer an Arsenal asset? Would I prefer a Ben White, who's probably going to be more attacking, and he has a better fixture in the first one? And that's something that's really key for me. I'm looking to be quite aggressive with my transfers early on. So if I can have White for the first three, maybe I do White and Guardiola, right? And I just hope that the Chelsea fixture goes okay. I think Chelsea are going to score. And I drop Trent. Or maybe I just go Trent and White and I just leave Guardiola. Yeah, I think he's going to concede in the first one. And then I'll just hope that he's not too attacking that. So that even if he does keep the clean sheets, given I've got two assets who are so good, both in terms of their defenses, right? Maybe the first and third best defense in the league. And I've also got huge attacking potential with the two, more so than Guardiola now. Well, all they have to do is get one attacking return and I can basically cover the two clean sheets from Guardiola. So and that's excluding the clean sheets from the Arsenal or Liverpool boys. So in that sense, I'm actually a little bit tempted to go without. I maybe either go a little bit cheaper or, like I said, I really am warming to the Arsenal boys. And that was the main point I wanted to make here. I do think he'll iterate again, and I don't think he'll be good for Guardiola's output. Now, I can understand why this one might not be popular, and I saved it till last because I do think there is some merit here. Now, disclaimer, he might leave, right? And if he does leave, or if his contract situation is up in the air, then he won't start because they have such an able understudy in Livramento, who in my opinion is just a much better player. Anyway, I think selling Trippier should be a pretty decent move for them. If they can get a decent fee, they have an unbelievable talent in Livramento. So good that I think they'll be absolutely fine. But assuming that he stays, is this an overlooked opportunity? We all have a Dan Burn, a Lewis Hall, a Livramento in our side because the fixtures are pretty good to start, and they are, right? Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, and then Wolves are away in game week 4 is a nice start. He is so key to this Newcastle side in terms of the fact that their 8s are very physical, right? And they don't really have a creative or a passer. Bruno Guimaraes would be that, but he often plays at 6, just given the nature of their squad structure, right? And he has to play that, which is a shame because he would be an unreal 8 for so many sides. Of course, Newcastle as well. With that in mind, some of the creative and progressive reliance essentially falls on him. Whether that be him going up the right flank and then coming inside a little bit with those, I guess, diagonal-like balls, or just the fact that he's quite competent as a passer. All these type of things, they really help Newcastle flourish, but also, more importantly, they help him in terms of the bonus point system, and that's what I wanted to get at. Remember, not last year, but the season before, this man was a lock in everyone's team because he was unreal on the bonus points. They could concede, he would get 1 assist, they would lose like 2-1, and he'll still pick up 3 bonus points. And there's no real reason for that to change. Naturally, we've had a change in the bonus point system, which will make it more difficult for him to acquire that. But as a punt, if you wanted to go here, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. And I just wanted to pose it to you just in case, because I haven't seen pretty much anyone think about it. That concludes today's video. I hope you found that enjoyable. A variety of insights into the premium defenders, and definitely consider some of the things that were said, especially about Arsenal. If you did enjoy, please do like the video and consider subscribing. As I mentioned, there'll be a lot of content. And the closer we get to the deadline, I think the better the content will become. As of now, I'm still dealing with a very small sample size of information, and a lot of it's theory. But as more preseason games come along, I can definitely go into what I've seen from the systems and little things that I've picked up from players. So yeah, please do subscribe, and I shall see you for the next one tomorrow. Goodbye.